in the same mood again when she met him in the hall this morning. Of course she must play his tunes. Is it not the fate of women to play the tunes which men dictate, except in some rare case in which the woman can make herself the dictator? Lizzie loved to be a dictator, but at the present moment she knew that circumstances were against her. She watched him, so closely. At first he slept a good deal. He was never in bed very early, and on this morning had been up at 6. At Rugby he got out, and ate what he said was his breakfast. Would she not have a cup of tea? Again she shook her head and smiled. She smiled as some women smile when you offer them a third glass of champagne. You are joking with me, I know. You cannot think that I would take it. That was the meaning of Lizzie's smile. He went into the refreshment room, growled at the heat of the tea and the abominable nastiness of the food provided, and then, after the allotted 5 minutes, took himself to a smoking carriage. He did not rejoin his cousin till they were at Crewe. When he went back to his old seat she only smiled again. He asked her whether she had slept, and again she shook her head. She had been repeating to herself the address to Ianthe's soul, and her whole being was pervaded with poetry. It was absolutely necessary, as he thought, that she should eat something, and he insisted that she should dine upon the road, somewhere. He, of course, was not aware that she had been nibbling biscuits and chocolate while he had been smoking, and had had recourse even to the comfort of a sherry flask which she carried in her dressing bag. When he talked of dinner she did more than smile and refuse. She expostulated. For she well knew that the 20 minutes for dinner were allowed at the Carlisle station, and even if there had been no chocolate and no sherry, she would have endured on, even up to absolute inanition, rather than step out upon this well-remembered platform. "You must eat, or you'll be starved," he said. "I'll fetch you something." So he bribed a special waiter, and she was supplied with cold chicken and more sherry. After this Frank smoked again, and did not reappear until they had reached Dumfries. Hitherto there had been no tenderness, nothing but the coldest cousinship. He clearly meant her to understand that he had submitted to the task of accompanying her back to Portray Castle as a duty, but that he had nothing to say to one who had so misbehaved herself. This was very irritating. She could have taken herself home to Portray without his company, and have made the journey more endurable without him than with him, if this were to be his conduct throughout. They had had the carriage to themselves all the way from Crewe to Carlisle, and he had hardly spoken a word to her. If he would have rated her soundly for her wickedness, she could have made something of that. She could have thrown herself on her knees, and implored his pardon, or, if hard pressed, have suggested the propriety of throwing herself out of the carriage window. She could have brought him round if he would only have talked to her, but there is no doing anything with a silent man. He was not her master. He had no power over her. She was the lady of Portray, and he could not interfere with her. If he intended to be sullen with her to the end, and to show his contempt for her, she would turn against him. "The worm will turn," she said to herself, and yet she did not think herself a worm. A few stations beyond Dumfries they were again alone. It was now quite dark, and they had already been travelling over 10 hours. They would not reach their own station till 8, and then again there would be the journey to Portray. At last he spoke to her. "Are you tired, Lizzie?" "Oh, so tired." "You have slept, I think." "No, not once, not a wink. You have slept." This she said in a tone of reproach. "Indeed I have." "I have endeavoured to read, but one cannot command one's mind at all times. Oh, I am so weary. Is it much further? I have lost all reckoning as to time and place." "We change at the next station but one." "It will soon be over now. Will you have a glass of sherry? I have some in my flask." Again she shook her head. "It is a long way down to Portray, I must own." "Oh, I am so sorry that I have given you the trouble to accompany me." "I was not thinking of myself. I don't mind it. It was better that you should have somebody with you, just for this journey." "I don't know why this journey should be different from any other," said Lizzie crossly. She had not done anything that made it necessary that she should be taken care of, like a naughty girl. "I'll see you to the end of it now, anyway." "And you'll stay a few days with me, Frank? You won't go away at once? Say you'll stay a week. Dear, dear Frank, say you'll stay a week. I know that the house doesn't meet for ever so long. Oh, Frank, I do so wish you'd be more like yourself." There was no reason why she should not make one other effort, and as she made it every sign of fatigue passed away from her. "I'll stay over to morrow, certainly," he replied. "Only one day!" "Days with me mean money, Lizzie, and money is a thing which is at present very necessary to me." "I hate money." "That's very well for you, because you have plenty of it." "I hate money. It is the only thing that one has that one cannot give to those one loves. I could give you anything else, though it cost £1,000." "Pray don't. Most people like presents, but they only bore me." "Because you are so indifferent, Frank, so cold. Do you remember giving me a little ring?" "Very well indeed. It cost 8 and 6d." "I never thought what it cost, but there it is." This she said, drawing off her glove and showing him her finger. "And when I am dead, there it will be. You say you want money, Frank. May I not give it to you? Are not we brother and sister?" "My dear Lizzie, you say you hate money. Don't talk about it." "It is you that talk about it. I only talk about it because I want to give it to you. Yes, all that I have. When I first knew what was the real meaning of my husband's will, my only thought was to be of assistance to you." In real truth Frank was becoming very sick of her. It seemed to him now to have been almost impossible that he should ever soberly have thought of making her his wife. The charm was all gone, and even her prettiness had in his eyes lost its value. He looked at her, asking himself whether in truth she was pretty. She had been travelling all day, and perhaps the scrutiny was not fair. But he thought that even after the longest day's journey Lucy would not have been soiled, haggard, dishevelled, and unclean, as was this woman. Travellers again entered the carriage, and they went on with a crowd of persons till they reached the platform at which they changed the carriage for Troon. Then they were again alone, for a few minutes, and Lizzie, with infinite courage, determined that she would make her last attempt. "Frank," she said, "you know what it is that I mean. You cannot feel that I am ungenerous. You have made me love you. Will you have all that I have to give?" She was leaning over, close to him, and he was observing that her long lock of hair was out of curl and untidy, a thing that ought not to have been there during such a journey as this. "Do you not know," he said, "that I am engaged to marry Lucy Morris?" "No, I do not know it." "I have told you so more than once." "You cannot afford to marry her." "Then I shall do it without affording." Lizzie was about to speak, had already pronounced her rival's name in that tone of contempt which she so well knew how to use, when he stopped her. "Do not say anything against her, Lizzie, in my hearing, for I will not bear it. It would force me to leave you at the Troon station, and I had better see you now to the end of the journey." Lizzie flung herself back into the corner of her carriage, and did not utter another word till she reached Portray Castle. He handed her out of the railway carriage, and into her own vehicle which was waiting for them, attended to the maid, and got the luggage; but still she did not speak. It would be better that she should quarrel with him. That little snake, Lucy, would of course now tell him of the meeting between them in Hertford Street, after which anything but quarrelling would be impossible. What a fool the man must be! What an idiot! What a soft-hearted, mean-spirited fellow! Lucy, by her sly, quiet little stratagems, had got him once to speak the word, and now he had not courage enough to go back from it. He had less strength of will even than Lord Fawn. What she offered to him would be the making of him. With his position, his seat in Parliament, such a country house as Portray Castle, and the income which she would give him, there was nothing that he might not reach. And he was so infirm of purpose, that though he had hankered after it all, he would not open his hand to take it, because he was afraid of such a little thing as Lucy Morris. It was thus that she thought of him as she leaned back in the carriage without speaking. In giving her all that is due to her, we must acknowledge that she had less feeling of the injury done to her charms as a woman than might have been expected. That she hated Lucy was a matter of course, and equally so that she should be very angry with Frank Greystock. But the anger arose from general disappointment, rather than from any sense of her own despised beauty. "Ah, now I shall see my child," she said, as the carriage stopped at the castle gate. When Frank Greystock went to his supper, Miss Macnulty brought to him his cousin's compliments, with a message saying that she was too weary to see him again that night. The message had been intended to be curt and uncourteous, But Miss Macnulty